on this beautiful evening. Welcome to the program. First and always, let's see if you can understand what I'm saying. And then we'll take it from there. So I'll give it a moment to see who's going to be on. Give me some feedback, and then we'll begin from there. Hopefully this week there will be no problem. So I tried to start and restart. That's why I'm a little delayed, but it was on purpose because I see that the second time that the program begins is when usually things work out well. So I'm going to give it a moment, as always. See what any of you out there who are watching me have to say. Let me know if the audio is okay. You can understand what I am saying. Hello, Maria. Let me know. Can you understand me? So again, hello, hello, hello. So let me know if you can hear me clearly. Or else I'll have to restart again, and that usually fixes the problem. Facebook is a little bit of a problem. I tried reaching out to them with their telephone number, which doesn't seem to connect with anyone. And they want you to connect. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. They want you to connect through their, direct chat, which is usually a problem. So let's see. Hopefully this time the audio is good. Maria's saying to me yes, that you can understand me good. I'm going to wait for a few more people to pop in. Hello, Brenda. And yes again, so that means that you are hearing everything I'm saying, perfect English, and not, a bunch of screeching like it always has been. That's why I started it before, then I came off, and then restarted again. Because as I just said, the second time I come on, it seems to clear the problem always. Very strange. But as long as it's working, and we can have a broadcast, and you can all enjoy it, and me too, that's all that matters. So we'll wait for a bit for some more people to join us. And we have an interesting program once again. This is the second part of last week's program, which began in Greece, and my trip there and my experiences, there when I was in Greece. And now we're going to move, into Egypt, because I did the trip in 2 stages. That was not originally planned. My original trip was just to go to Greece only. But then it came to me in the course of the planning stages there that, it's so close to Egypt. It's just right over the Mediterranean. Let's see how much it costs. Let's see if it's possible to do. And luckily it did work out. I had a lot of help. And for that, from my friends from Adam Travel, who at that time were wonderful, and they also had Egyptian owners, which was extremely fortuitous and quite magical, because when I was referred to Adam Travel, it was through a friend of mine where I used to work. And he had recommended his friend Adolfo, who was a travel agent, when he heard about, my plans for a trip to Greece. And then when I also mentioned about Egypt, said, oh, well, let's see, Adolfo can possibly help you as well. So when I got to Adam Travel up in Lexington Avenue, it was a wonderful synchronicity of magic that the owners happened to be Egyptian. And they knew everything of what to do for me to get to Egypt as well. So it was perfect, absolutely perfect. It was meant to be. As I said, I had a lot of magical help, from the spirits, but also from here on earth as well. I had wonderful people everywhere helping to make this trip possible. So the most wonderful thing was that they guided me into knowing that I had to get a visa, because for Greece I did not need one, but for Egypt I did. And again, because Spirit does what it does, fortunately the Egyptian consulate was only about 2 blocks away from the travel agency. So it worked out beautifully. And I'll tell a little bit about that story, what happened there a little bit later. But as I said, magic happens when you put it out there. The world always wants to conspire to get you what you want. And that is the saying that I learned on this trip. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later on, too. So I'm going to make a note of that so I do not forget to mention that, as well. And I will tell you where that came from and who is responsible for me to learn that, also. So again, spirit magic was everywhere, and it was just beautiful, just the way everything came through. So we'll wait for more of an audience to come up and see who else is out there. Let me go into the wall and see if anybody else is joining us. So far, we just got in for 5 minutes, so we'll give it a little bit of time to get enough of an audience going. If anyone is out there that is not identifying themselves, if you can let me know just by saying hello, that's all you need to say, or write down on the wall so I have an idea how many of you are out there and who exactly is out there, too. So it's a beautiful Friday evening, very hot, humid. It really is, a very summer-like day. And actually today is the last day of spring, because tomorrow and Sunday begins summer. So we're at the very, very end of spring, which feels already more like summer and has been for the last week or two. So the season has been anxious to get started, which is a very good thing because we certainly need it at this time with everything that we've been through in the last 3 months or so. It's been a very impressive time. I've spoken about this many times already in the past, and we could certainly use a lot of light and a lot of warmth and a lot of love. And so far, at least the weather, the atmosphere in that manner is agreeing, with that. So up here in New York, New Jersey, the northern eastern seaboard, we're getting above normal weather at this time, which is wonderful to experience. Something a little happy to have at this time. Hello, Lisette. Thank you for joining me, Lisette. I'm glad that you're here. And so we are enjoying, early summer already. And it begins, we have a very important weekend, as many of you know, because besides it being the first beginnings of summer, we also have, a solar eclipse happening as well in the sign of Cancer, which is also beginning this weekend, as well. So this is a very major transition point that we are undergoing at this time. Lots of metaphysical, astronomical, astrological changes, are happening. The moon, of course, is, having the solar eclipse with the sun. It's going to be a ring of fire eclipse as well, so a special eclipse also. So hopefully we'll get to see some vestige of it in some way. I'm not too clear if we're going to be able to see it here from the northern hemisphere, at least here in the northeast seaboard, but I have to look into that a little bit more. But if you can go into one of the various programs that are available over the internet, such as SLOOH, which is SLOOH, they provide live broadcasts of the eclipse happening. And they have magnificent telescopes from the Canary Islands, from Argentina, throughout various points of the world that have that clarity to be able to see, into the heavens, and they are able to access those telescopes with the help of NASA, also, in order to be able to see these incredible astronomical and astrological events. So I certainly will be on SLOOH. Actually, there's also Stonehenge as well happening along with this eclipse. So it is the summer solstice. And this year, for the very first time, Stonehenge will be broadcasting the eclipse and summer solstice live from England. So there are internet access capabilities that you'll be able to see the broadcast live from England. Also from Salisbury, England, where people used to gather anyway until this year to see, the solar eclipse passing through the stones of the henge. So they are going to broadcast live, so that way the entire world will be able to experience live the actual summer solstice at Stonehenge. So there's a lot of exciting things happening this weekend. A new beginning, a new birth of things to come. So far here in the New York region, if for those of you who are aware of it, and I know I have some people that are watching from other parts of the world, here too. But here in New York, we're going to be beginning phase two, you know, coming from the pandemic. So that is more of an opening up of the city, finally, since the numbers for the pandemic have gone down so significantly, where it is deemed that it is safer to start opening establishments such as retail stores, restaurants with outdoor dining, parks, for children to play will have the permission to open up as well. Of course, it will all be monitored and very carefully so. I do understand that the theaters will also be starting to open, as well. So already movies are starting to move into their schedules to get, movies for the summer actually shown in indoor theaters. But we also have the new advent. Well, actually, it's not new, but the very old, outdoor, movies. The drive-in theaters are making a comeback, and there will be a few available here in New York City or New York area, as well as New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So those will be coming up and running, so people can go to the movies and stay in their car. This was very popular all the way back in the 1950s, 40s, the 60s, where we used to have drive-in theaters, and they were wonderful, a lot of fun. So that's coming back for safety purposes, so people can stay within their own cars and enjoy a movie. So hopefully, if it comes to that here at some point in New York, and I'm close to one, I'd love to go see one as well. I haven't been to a drive-in theater in decades. So that'll be a lot of fun. And so things are gradually opening up. The world here, at least in the north portion of the United States, is starting to come back to normal, little by little, steps by step by step. But it is a positive. As long as people take care of themselves, follow what they have to in the regulations, the protocols, more will start to open up, soon. So as I predicted for July, I felt that things would really be starting to come back to normal, or more of a semblance of normalcy once again. So far, things are starting to head in that direction. They're turning out. So let's hope that everybody does what they need to do to be responsible, so that we don't have a second wave of pandemic where they have to immediately start to close things down again. That would be a very sad thing, especially now in the summer. So we have to wait and see, and I'm keeping a close eye on that, as well. So I'm just waiting for more of an audience to come in. Here I'm going down the wall here to see who else is out there. I know it's a beautiful Friday evening, so perhaps people may be out a little bit more, hanging out, taking walks or so to enjoy the weather. They've been waiting for a long time for this, but we will have a program. And we will continue the second phase, of my program as well, which I have entitled Return to Egypt. And I'll explain a little bit later why, I called it that. So it's a wonderful two-part, program. I hope those of you who saw the program last week, enjoyed the information, the experiences that I had, and what you can take from that to apply to yourselves, so that you too can hopefully have experiences similar, to that, with places that you would like to visit, or maybe perhaps you have, but maybe wish to return to, or in other ways. This also application is very important. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer here. It's 8:33. Let's give it another 2 minutes and see what an audience comes in, and then we'll start. So what I am going to do is actually start from where I left off last week, which where I was, heading to the airport, from Greece, to board the plane, to Egypt. However, before we move on and take that trip, to Egypt, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I'm going to stay in Greece for a little bit longer to bring up two very important experiences that I had, there, that are very metaphysical, also. I didn't speak about them because we got into the program. There were some kinks along the way when I first started, so I wanted to get up and running, and there was a lot more to cover than even I, thought was going to be happening for last week's program. So we went a little bit over time, but nevertheless, these are two very important, elements that occurred during my time in Greece that I don't want to leave out, and hopefully they will inspire you, as well. And once again, you can see how spirit works. As long as you know to recognize the signs, open, be aware, get into it, and experience. These are the ways the spirit, it works for us, to let us know, to teach us what we need to learn, what we need to see, how we can relate and have, faith in the miracles of spirit, but also to tap into our own intuition, our own period of time here on earth, and see that our feelings, our thoughts about certain events, certain places, certain experiences, are true, are genuine. And spirit has the way of showing us and giving us proof, giving us confirmation that indeed what we thought, what we felt, what we experienced, whatever affinities that we have for certain things, places, events are real. So both of these experiences I'm going to talk about are just that. So at this point it is 8:35. So sit back, relax, and we're going to begin, okay, with our story, or actually our continuation of our story. So when I was in Athens, I was, walking about the ancient area known as La Placa. And La Placa is the tourist, the area also, just at the foot of the Acropolis. And for those of you who are not aware, if you haven't been to Greece or Athens or whatever, La Placa is very famous as a tourist attraction. Many beautiful stores, boutiques, restaurants for tourists and native peoples, go to hang out. There, La Placa every evening. Greece has wonderful climate, wonderful temperature. So you can hang out there all year long. So La Placa was close, luckily, to my hotel. So I was there every day, going through there and visiting and seeing the sights. But La Placa, along with a lot of Athens and a lot of places in Greece, have ruins all over the city. Ruins from thousands of years ago. And what the Greek people do when there's a site that has ruins about is that they usually cordon them off. They may build around them or even over them. I was in several places in Athens where I saw that, for instance, there was a beautiful residential building in the city of Athens, and I'm passing by with my friends, and we looked about and said, oh my God, isn't that something else? Right under the building, one section of that modern building, there were ruins. There were columns, ancient bricks, marble, in pieces, through a section, there. And what they did, instead of removing, those artifacts, those remnants, those ruins from the spot, from the place, they left them there. They will not remove things that are in the original space. It is called in situ. In terms of art history, art education, in situ means, it's in its place, in its original, place. So they will not remove those items or those ruins from that spot. They will cordon them off, build protection around them, because sometimes these places are archaeological sites as well. So they are digging in there to find out more about the past history, of their culture, to see what incredible finds, they may, discover, from thousands of years ago. So what they do is that they will build over these things if necessary, and that's what the case here. They actually left the place alone. They put like some columns in there or some glass even around the particular section of the building, and they built the building over this particular area. So they left it intact, and people are living above ruins, literally. So this is not uncommon, in Greece. So similar in La Placa, there are several places there that they will leave, alone, and they'll build around it because they are going to do archaeological digs. And I saw some of them that they actually do, and they are protecting, the ruins, from thousands of years ago. So as I was walking through La Placa one day, there was a small section, there of land, and there were like one or two ruins. There a small portion of a column, something from an ancient building, from a temple things are there, whatever, just strewn throughout. It wasn't a very large, portion of land, but it was protected. And they had, fencing around it to protect this place. They didn't want anyone walking in there. And I do believe that they were doing some archaeological excavations, there as well in that particular area there. So it wasn't particularly outstanding. It was just there were some ruins there. They were protecting the land. So I walked about, and it could be the size, let's say, of a small playground, just to give you an idea what this was like. So I was walking there, and I just stood there to see this. Because remember, this was my first trip ever internationally. And it was something very special for me to be in this place that was thousands of years old, that a civilization and people had lived 5,000, 7,000, even more years ago. And I'd never experienced this ever. So it was incredibly impressive and also very thrilling for me to be able to be in this place and see this in person. So I was standing in front there of this land, staring, and there was just some grass there, so nothing very, very significant beyond, several pieces of old, architecture that were strewn around. And it was this plot of land, there was some grass there, and I noticed within there seemed to be like an old, kind of faint in a way, faint dirt road that was in there. So apparently this was the place where people used to walk, I guess to go to the Acropolis or to just travel throughout old, Athens. And it was just this old little dirt road, nothing significant or special. It was just very ancient because of the significance of the land. So I was looking at this and staring at this, and I'm thinking, my goodness, to think that this land and that dirt road, that path, that people used to walk on, is like 5,000, 6,000 or more years old, and people that who lived so long ago actually walked that path. So that was very, very impressive to me to see this. And as I was staring at this, my gaze was just drawn to it, and I started drifting into a sort of a trance, at that moment. And as I was doing this, I was getting the sensation of spirit, coming around and over me. And I was just getting the sensation of going back in time and going back into the past when this land was vital and when it was, relevant for the peoples who lived there so long ago. And as I'm staring at this and going in this trance-like state, the most incredible feeling came over me. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, first of all. I experienced a sense of dissonance within me, where I was looking at something that wasn't of my comprehension exactly. I know this is going to sound a little strange and somewhat vague for all of you, but this is very hard to explain, going through this type of experience. Because again, I'm not used to that, and I've never encountered something like this ever before. But again, I've never been to a place that was thousands of years old and still there. Just the sense of looking at this place and trying to get a sense of what it was like at that time period was very difficult, for me. So there was this great discomfort in me and in my psyche to be able to comprehend this time period that I was going back into. And it felt like I couldn't understand it. Almost like I wasn't possible for me or allowing me to be able to feel this and to see it, because it was not of my time. This was another existence, another way of living. The closest that I can explain it to you in feeling, if it is even possible, is that it was like experiencing another dimension where I certainly am not a part of that, or we are not a part of that other place, that other dimension. It was another form, another type, another essence of existence. And that was very, very odd to feel, because I was having a hard time comprehending, this in mind and in feeling. So very one of the most unusual experiences I have ever undergone. But I'm looking at this and I'm in the trance-like state, but I'm still also present in this world as well simultaneously. So I'm having this experience and I'm seeing this and having this incredible discomfort and feeling that this was almost forbidden for me to be doing this or experiencing or seeing this. It was a bit frightening there for a moment there too. I said, oh my God, this is an incredible thing. And I know I was obviously afterward learning, from this. But just seeing this and going through that was, even to this day, I find it a little hard to explain or to describe to you what that is like. But I know I received a bit of a gift, by going through there and having that experience. I mean, allowed to have some sort of a perception, or even just to see something of it or enough of it to be able to have this kind of thought and this type of experience so that I can bring it back and explain it to you, as well. So you see the way how the world works, the way how spirit works, the way how time periods work. It is in essence a form of time travel, if you can understand it in that way. And that was my experience of a bit or a form of time travel by going back and going to that period 4,000, 5,000 years ago. Even the air, the atmosphere felt different, not like it does now. It was a different time. It was a different experience those people lived. When they were alive at that time, it was meant for them. I was just a visitor there for a few minutes. And this let me know that I was not from that time period. And God only knows if I would be able to even exist in that time period, if I could project myself even more fully back then, if it would be allowed. It might even be dangerous to be able to do such a thing, because I am not from that era. I am not from that place. I am not from those people at that time. That was for them. That was their experience. That was their life. I was just allowed a glimpse, of that. So that was very precious, to experience. So we're talking about past life. We're talking about time travel in a way, having a touch of that to witness and to see and to feel. Very, 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 I feel very blessed by being able to have had that experience. And it took me a while to come out of it a bit. Once I returned, I kind of snapped out of it. And it took me for a while to readjust myself back to the present, here. And I had to gather myself a bit there or so, and it lasted for a while. I was thinking through it as I continued my walk throughout, La Plaga district, and it took a while for me to shake, that off. Different vibration, different frequency. So I had to reacclimate here in this current time period and get my senses reoriented, once again. And of course, afterward, I thought about it and processed it later on. That was part of my experience and part of the reason why I went and to take the trip in the first place to Greece, to experience, things like that connection that I had, and to listen to the spirits that guided me there, also, because I needed to be there. I needed to learn. I needed to see. I needed to see why this was. Why do I have this feeling for this place, for that civilization, for these people? And I did get several answers, from there at that time period. So that was very impressive. The next experience, hello Daisy, thank you so much. Blessings to you also, Daisy, as always, Miha, always. So, as I move forward, then I went from Athens to Delphi. And those of you who were with me last week know about my experiences there in Delphi and how magical and how wondrous they were. And I knew that the spirit of Apollo, was there and was watching over me and guiding me the whole time. He made his presence known from the very first day, in fact, within the very first half hour that I was there. He made his presence known. And for those of you who missed last week's program, Delphi is the ancient town up in the mountains in central Greece. It is known for its Temple of Apollo. Delphi is the Delphic oracle, as well. So the priests and priestesses of Pythia and of the Delphic Temple of Apollo resided there, and they offered prophecies, there to those who came for pilgrimages, to gain answers from the god Apollo, spoken through the words of the Pythian priestess at the actual temple. So I was guided to go to Delphi, and indeed it was truly a magical and incredible experience. So I know that Apollo is there, his spirit is there, and one thing I certainly learned from going to Delphi especially was that I know that the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece are no myth. And from what I heard from other people, experiencing in other ways, they have felt, seen, heard, have had experiences that the gods of ancient Greece are real. And I certainly experienced it myself there. Incredible synchronicities that occurred that cannot be explained in any other way. And the feeling that I got from it, and usually Apollo and these spirits work through feeling and essence within you. As long as you are open and ask, they will come through. And they certainly did for me then, with Apollo especially, in Delphi. So, I talked about several experiences there, but one that I didn't leave out that was very significant actually was after my first day, actually my second day in Delphi, I woke up in the morning because I had to go have breakfast and pack my final things because I was leaving Delphi, from there, around early afternoon. So I awoke in that morning, and I went to the window. And I had this beautiful room in Delphi, so I opened the expansive panoramic window, the curtains, I pulled them back, and I had a beautiful view of the Phocis Valley, the Valley of Olives, and in the distance overlooking the Gulf of Corinth. Absolutely magnificent. So when I opened the window, I saw hundreds of little birds flying all over the valley, all over in front of my window. There were literally hundreds of little birds flying everywhere. And this must have been about 8 in the morning or so. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I've never seen so many birds flying, all over the place, back and forth and swooping forward and backwards, all over the Phocis Valley, all over the Valley of Olives. And the Valley of Olives is a rather, large place. It's not a small little valley. There's a lot of acres there because there are olive groves, there at the center. And there are some, the mountains in the back and some people living, there throughout that you can see. And it was like the most wondrous sight to see. All these beautiful birds flying about and chirping all over. It was just glorious. Oh my God, this is incredible. They were coming right in front of me. I had a small balcony, so I was able to step forward for a bit and see this. And they were everywhere, everywhere. So I thought, I have to get this on camera. I just have to get this on camera. So I just looked away briefly, and I can tell you it was like 3 seconds, literally, that I looked away. So to kind of reenact that, what I did was just step back a bit like I'm doing now, turn around, grab my video camera, turn back, put the camera to my face so I could videotape this, and I will tell you, in those 3 seconds, The birds vanished. They were gone completely. There wasn't a single bird, a single chirp or sound throughout the entire valley. I was like, what? What is it? What happened? It was one of the most astounding experiences I have ever had. It was like they were just gone. I mean, there were literally hundreds of birds flying in front of my window and in front of the valley, all over the place. Beautiful chirps everywhere. It was incredible. And then just to turn and then turn back again with a cat, and they were just gone completely. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. I stepped out in front of, I was looking all over the place, forward, backward, everywhere, looking up, looking down. I said, nothing. I said, how could this be? There were hundreds of birds here. This is not possible. They just can't disappear. This cannot happen in just 3 seconds or so. This cannot happen. I stayed there for a good 10 minutes, looking and waiting to see if they would return or something would happen. I will tell you, like 10 minutes or so, nothing. It was complete silence. They completely disappeared, did not come back. In those 10 minutes or so that I was waiting there for something to happen again, nothing. It was absolute silence. I was absolutely awestruck. So once I said, obviously nothing's going to happen, I stepped back. I said, there's something here. Once again, that was a phrase that I kept saying to myself throughout my trip there, because wondrous things happened where the only thing that I could speak or even think about was, there's something here. And I said, once again, there's something here. This was magical. So I stepped back into my room and I looked up and I said, oh my goodness, you've done this as a gift, just to show me that you are here. And you provided that as more validation that you are here and that you are magical and that you do things like this just to show that you are real. So I considered it a blessing once again from Apollo and the spirits, there. And because there was no, it's just, that's what it was. And I was just grateful and again and thankful for the experience to happen. And it was just, again, I didn't know what to think. I was left in a state of of awe. My mouth open there for a good hour or so. And still, checking back, as I was heading into the restroom to brush my teeth, clean my face, take my shower, get dressed for breakfast. I was meeting my friend James and Miriam, later on there, for breakfast before I left. And I just, would do a little something, go back to the window to see if anything happened. Nothing. Not a single bird, not a single sound returned for the rest of the morning. It was just absolutely incredible. So I wanted to give you that, story as well as part of my metaphysical journey, in Greece, because that was magic, and that was spirit, and that was the spirit of Apollo, letting me know that indeed in the 2 days that I was there, that he was certainly watching over me and guiding me, and just making sure that I absorbed the energy so I could bring back, here with me, and to use, for future purposes, for future spiritual work. So those were 2 incredible experiences I had in Greece that I did not want to leave out. I wanted to know about them. Hopefully that will inspire you, again, to listen to spirit, to be open to wondrous things that can occur and happen, to go into it, let your imagination open, because your imagination is the doorway to spirit. When you feel something, go with it. Don't start questioning it or denying it. Just go with it. As long as you're realistic and grounded, incredible things can happen for you, as they did for me in Greece with these 2 other experiences that I just mentioned to you. So take that for what it is. There is such a thing as past lives. You can access that yourself as long as you're open to it and go into it and see what you can experience, from there. It can tell you a lot. And what the good thing about past life experiences, which I know that I did have in Greece, just by having that, especially there, and the other things that I had, going on there while I was there for that week or so, was that, indeed it made me more attuned to things of the past and how they can be relevant for feelings and thoughts here, and how they can be helpful in resolving issues, confusions that you may be experiencing here, due in part to that, to those thoughts, those feelings, but also experiences that you're having here in your current life as well. Why you react to certain things in a certain way without explanation, without what you may think reason as to why I feel this way about a certain thing or a certain person or a certain experience, or why I have these reactions, why do I have these predilections for things, why do I have these dislikes for certain things. Sometimes it has nothing to do with what is present here. A lot of times it is things and experiences or memories that you bring back from your past life or past lives. You don't find the answers here. You can go back, whether with the assistance of a trained hypnotherapist that does past life regressions, or do it on your own if you have the capability and the confidence to do that as well. And you have to have a lot of, let's say, faith in yourself in order to do that. And go back and see what you can experience from another time period or time periods that could provide the answers as to why you feel about certain things the way you do here in your present life. It can resolve a lot of issues, a lot of questions. It can help to liberate and free you of certain habits that you may have that are not exactly the healthiest, for you, or certain things that may bother you as well. You can receive answers, or at least be on the road to getting those answers finally, and it can be very liberating and very freeing for you because of that. So that's something for you to learn about and to think about here. So now moving along, it's 9 o'clock, so we're doing okay here. So we're now going to jump on that plane from Athens, Greece, and head to Egypt. So off I went on the plane ride. It was late at night. I took a late flight, what they call a red eye, from Athens to Cairo. So I flew over the Mediterranean. It was beautiful to see that at night. I remember seeing very clearly out my window because there were not very many people on the plane. So I had whatever choice of window seat I wanted. So of course I was going to sit, at one in the middle of the plane where you get the best view of things usually. So as we were flying about, pilot said to us, we are passing over the island of Thera or Santorini. So I looked over and I got to see Santorini at night with all its beautiful lights illuminated beautifully around the crater. Santorini used to be in the ancient times known as Thera or Thera, the ancient island of the Minoan civilization. And there was King Minos and his kingdom there, and there are tremendous remnants of that Minoan period and society, partially still in Thera Santorini. And you can go visit the island. Of course, there are wonderful islands throughout the Mediterranean that are part of Greece, that are very ancient, that many of you know that you can go visit, as well as Santorini, Lesbos, Delos as well. The party island, I forgot its name right now. How odd. The one that many people like to go to because it's really known as the party island of the Mediterranean, Mykonos. So you can visit many of those various islands, and they're absolutely beautiful and wonderful. So I got to fly over and got to see the crater that's left over because Thera had a tremendous volcano. And thousands of years ago it exploded and really destroyed the entire civilization. So all that was left of Thera was the island, and it's in the form of a crescent, like a crater that's left there. So it's a caldera, basically, what is left, thereof, Santorini. So I got to see that, live and in person. Very impressive and wondrous because, oh my God, that looks just very much like what I've seen on television or so. Truly tremendous. So that was a treat, for me. So we kept on going on the plane. And then about a while later, I see the pilot suddenly comes on and says, well, ladies and gentlemen, please get ready. We are approaching the coast of Africa and we'll be landing in Cairo in about 20 minutes. So that was one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. I know that sounds very minute, but that's when it really hit me that, oh my goodness, I'm going to Africa. This is incredible. It was just mind-boggling to me. It still is, actually. All 18 years later, I still can't believe that I went to Africa. So I looked out from the window and I saw the coastline of North Africa, in lights, as we were approaching. That was absolutely thrilling for me. I'm looking at this, and, my goodness, it really looks like the globe. It really looks like, what you see on television. And I felt very familiar in a way. It didn't feel like I was going to a really, really foreign place. I felt I'm going to someplace that I know. And that was an inkling for me about my past life or lives as well. But also it's very exciting to have that experience. So we arrive in Egypt like about what? Maybe 2 in the morning or so. And in Cairo airport, very exciting for me. I found a taxi luckily from Cairo International Airport. And we traveled off to Giza, where I was staying at my hotel. So what I learned from there was that Cairo is a very large city, very large. And the trip from the international to Cairo International Airport to the hotel in Giza was like a little over an hour. I was like, wow, this is something else. Luckily, I had studied a little bit beforehand, so I had Egyptian pounds, on me. So I had to change from, what we used in Greece at that time, which was actually the first year where they started using the euro. Before then, it was the drachma in Greece, but that was when the currency change occurred. So I was lucky in a way that they instituted the euro in Greece, as they had in practically every other country in Europe. So in a way, it made it a little bit easier for me to navigate my way through Greece monetarily. But I had to change, money, so I know that there was Egyptian pounds because after all, I was in a different country and in a different continent, as well. So I wasn't really 100% sure what to expect, there. Luckily, before leaving, for the trip in general, I was able to go to the Egyptian consulate here in Manhattan, as I explained to you a little earlier, and I got to meet the consulate general, of Egypt, for Greece, at least for New York City, here, and Mr. Pena. So when I went to get my visa there at the site, there monitors on the television or so, and for some reason, one of the staff there said, can you please come, and with me? I said, oh, okay, I just want to get a visa, apply for one. So he guided me into this office, and there was the Consulate General Abu Pena, there, and he wanted to meet me. I said, okay, that's really something. And he was very nice and very gracious, and he asked me, oh, why do you want to go to Egypt? And I told him, I want to go see the pyramids. And I explained to him that I had studied in university and that it was a concentration of my education was ancient art history, and that I studied a lot of Egyptian art when I was there, and also Egyptian history, also. So I wanted to see these places in person. So he was very pleased when hearing that, and he provided a lot of advice, and he gave me some brochures or whatever also, and so he was very gracious. They'll do this and do that, and you have to change Egyptian pounds. So I learned from him what to expect to a great, extent. Hello, everybody out there. I'll answer your questions later when I have afterward. So, from there, I had my Egyptian pounds ready. So off we went, and we traveled through, old Cairo. I got to see the city. I got to see the Nile, as well. We passed over the Nile, Cairo Tower, as well. Very large, incredible city in the desert, lots of life, lots of people, fascinating. And along the way, of course, I got to see, a McDonald's in Cairo, as well as Kentucky Fried Chicken also in Cairo too. So wherever you go, honey, you're always going to have McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. Just to let you know, should you go to Cairo one day. So, passing by through there, got to see all of these glorious sights, from old and new Egypt. Very, very impressive. Finally got to my hotel, and there was an absolutely beautiful resort, hotel called the Pyramids Park Resort, right in Giza. And it was very late, so I couldn't see that much of it, but it was an expansive, beautiful hotel. I checked in. They were very, very lovely and very gracious. And one of the wonderful things I learned immediately in Egypt was that the majority of people speak beautiful English. So I felt very, very, safe, and secure because of that. That's just throwing a little bit extra should you ever happen to want to visit Egypt, okay? You're going to be very, very well taken care of. So, to my beautiful room I went, very expansive, looked like a palatial estate. And, unpacked and went to sleep immediately because it was like 3:30 in the morning or so. Fine. So, wake up the next day, sometime late in the morning because you had to sleep. And draw the curtains from my room, and then this beautiful sunlight there. I had a beautiful, patio in the back. I had a ground level, room. And this particular resort, there were only like 2 or 3 levels. I was lucky I had a ground floor, space. Giant room. And I got to step out for a bit, smell the air of Africa. It was glorious, just beautiful. Got to see the back of the hotel a bit, beautiful foliage, very manicured exquisitely. Anyway, so for the first day, I just took it a little bit easy, started to make my plan, for my trip, throughout Egypt for the next near week that I was going to be there. So I was just getting familiar with the grounds there. I was a little bit, nervous because this was a different continent and a different country I'd never been to before. This is not like Greece, where I had, some friends there that were very lovely, to me. Here in Egypt, I had no one. I didn't know anyone there. I had to rely on myself. Luckily, I had the contact information for Consulate General, Abu Pena, just in case. If anything went awry, he made sure that I had his contact information, so I could always contact him should I needed any assistance, from him. But it's not the same as actually having people that there. So I was a little wary at the beginning. So, I refreshed myself, so went to have a beautiful breakfast there. The resort was absolutely astoundingly beautiful. Looked like a modern Egyptian temple. It was absolutely glorious, absolutely glorious. Everyone was absolutely gracious and lovely, just beautiful. And then I stepped out for a bit around the grounds, seeing the beautiful Olympic-sized swimming pool, which was incredible. Stepped out in front of the hotel, and all I could see was there was a roadway, Alexandria Desert Road, and across from that, a lot of desert. Egypt has a lot of desert. So I stepped forward, I looked to my left, and what do I see in the distance? But a giant pyramid. Staring, I was staring at it. Oh my God, that's the pyramid, one of the pyramids. It was awe-inspiring, absolutely incredible, the way it's shown in the sun. And then, I can't wait to go see this in person. So, for the first day, I stayed close to home, there, just to regain myself and get some familiarity of the place or so. I made arrangements for a tour, which they were very, very gracious about. And I had a one-person tour the next day, set up. So I was going to be met by taxi, taken to a place over there to take a tour of the pyramids, in Giza. So that was impressive. So I regained myself. The next day I was ready. Taxi came to pick me up. Off we went for a 10-minute trip from my hotel to the Giza Plateau. There I was rushed out of the taxi immediately to a camel. So there was the camel, person there, and my guide, also there. So they were all waiting for me and said, okay, let's get ready, get on the camels. Oh my God. And it was impressive to get on the camel. And camel was not exactly the friendliest one. I learned that many camels have different personalities. The camel that I, had was not exactly the friendliest one. Just to get on the thing was impressive. Then when he got up, said, just hold on. So gets up on his front feet and back. Oh my God. And the camel was like having menopause. Not the best, attitude, but nevertheless fine. The guide was there, the camel, person was there to hold it, from the rope, and off we went through the Giza Plateau. So, up we go around there, and one of the first things I learned was that there are people living at the foot of the pyramids. It's a very impressive thing to witness. Very poor people, at least going back to 2002. I don't know if things have changed, since then. But going, taking the trail upwards towards the Giza Plateau, there's a small village or villages at the foot of the magnificent pyramids where very poor people live in shanty towns, literally. And some of their homes were just aluminum foil roofs, wooden, walls that they built, there, and they actually live in these places, there. And they're desert people, and that's how they live. It was very incredible. That was something I was not expecting. I had never heard of this. It was quite impressive. And they were very, very lovely people. As I passed by, as I was being ridden on the camel, they were all saying, hello, hello, and waving at me, and welcome to Egypt. And it was just very lovely to experience that. The children that were there would come up and just wave hello and say, hello, welcome to Egypt. And they were lovely, just lovely. So warm and so friendly. And the children were barefoot in some cases, and they were just playing happily there in front of their homes, right there in the desert sands. And it's something I will never forget, never. And they just seemed very happy and very at peace. So that was a very impressive experience to see. I'll never, never forget that. Never, never. And they were just beautiful. So off we go up, the trail, and we're at the foot of the pyramids. And said, my goodness, how incredible to experience this. So we were there and looking at this. You take your pictures. So I had a video camera. I did a lot of video work. I should have taken more pictures. At that time we didn't have the Android or iPhones that we do now have, or else it would have been, free for all. I did have my regular camera with me. I took some pictures. I posted some on my Facebook page, actually. I'll see if I can find them again and post them anew. But I took a lot of video, and I do have that. And again, as I said last week, from Greece and from Egypt, I have to transfer that from VHS tape to CD, so then I can load it here on the computer, and I can load some of that video for you to see, so you can actually see my actual trip, in parts, there, and what I experienced. So that'll be coming up soon. Anyway, at one point, my guide said, I'm going to take you to the ancient burial, places of the queens, first and foremost. Very good. So we arrived at this space in front of the pyramids, kind of like an opening there. And he said, we came down from the camel, and we had to climb down. I said, you ready? You have to climb down like 40 feet underground, because that's where the queen's chamber is. I said, oh, I was like, honey, I came all this way. I am ready. Do whatever. I had sandals on. I didn't care. So I had to climb down. You have to go backwards and down. There are slats, so it was quite relatively safe. I said, 40 feet down, with a camera and whatever. This is something else. But I love adventure, so away I went. So down I go into this tunnel, with him first and me following, going down backwards, and it was all right, 40 feet underground. When we arrive at the ancient tomb of Queen Herenheteb, one of Khufu's wives. There in ancient Egypt, people believed in polygamy, so they had many wives, the pharaohs. These were two of his favorites. So Herrenheteb was the first tomb that I visited. It was illuminated, luckily, because they had put that in place. So it was a relatively large, space there. You could see the ancient place where the queen had once laid. She is no longer present there. Whatever mummy or sarcophagus that were there would be now the American Museum of Egyptology, in Cairo. So, but what there were inscriptions in the walls, the ancient space there. And as I was there in this space, I was struck by how comfortable it was, first of all. You'd think that being 40 feet under the ground would be very hot and not have any air to breathe properly. It was quite the opposite. The temperature was beautiful. There was more than enough air to breathe. I was looking at all these incredible inscriptions throughout the walls depicting Queen Herenheteb's life. Very impressive. As I said, I felt very comfortable. But the most important thing was that I also felt an energy coming around. And since I am an empath, that is the way that I perceive and get spirit. So, as I was open to spirit, because you go to these places, you are psychic, you're going to be open. That's what you are there for after all. So I was open to receive. And sure enough, I got the essence of Queen Herenheteb coming around me or so. And she was very lovely and very welcoming. I had a good sense of a person with a good personality, very welcoming, very open as well. And it was glorious to feel her presence there. She was very pleased that we were there, to be there in her space, and that we were acknowledging, her life and her burial, chamber. And I knew that I just felt very, very welcomed and very comfortable. I sat in a space there that was there for other things at one time, and I was just, inhaling all of this atmosphere, getting a sense of things, getting a sense of a queen who was very noble, but also very kind as well, and just very open. It was so comfortable in there, I didn't want to leave because I was just having such a good experience and seeing all the hieroglyphics and experiencing this person from thousands of years ago and her energy in her space. And to have someone, a noble one, who was so welcoming and so open was something I was not expecting. So that was very impressive. It was wonderful to be able to absorb that. As I'm telling you this story, I can feel it once again. I'm going back, remembering 18 years ago when I was there. I'm seeing it, and I can feel that essence, once again coming around. Not to the same way as I was actually there, but I can feel the space of how very, very, very gracious and kind and such a good personality that, the Queen Herenheteb, was when she was alive and continues to be, in spirit. Looking at all the magnificent hieroglyphics of her past life was glorious, just glorious. And so that was impressive. So we left Queen Herenheteb's chamber. I thanked her very much for allowing me to be in her space and for her hospitality. And I took that with me, also as I was climbing back up, back to the desert. From there, we took a short walk to the next mastaba, which is, a burial place that is Egyptian for burial place. And we went to visit the next queen of Khufu. So this was Merenheteb. So once again, we climbed down the chambers, very similar as before, and we arrived in Queen Merenheteb's, chamber, which was very much similar to Queen Herenheteb. Again, very comfortable, lots of light, a different configuration here and there. Seemed a little smaller somehow with this particular chamber, but there was again her space where her sarcophagus, once was laid, no longer there either. Unfortunately, a lot of these, tombs or wherever were pillaged or robbed, thousands of years ago. But whatever that was there, that was remained, was taken to the Museum of Cairo. But again, more hieroglyphics were on the walls, depicting Merenheteb's, lifetime. Glorious to see. While I was there, I immediately felt a difference in personality. For I was getting a sense then, as I was open to Queen Merenheteb. Queen Merenheteb was more reserved, her energy. She was not as open or as friendly as Queen Herrenheteb, was. She was more reserved, more, let's say, removed Yeah. I mean, I was there, but I wasn't getting the same connection as I was getting from Queen Herenheteb. I mean, she was there. Her presence was felt. I felt her presence. Um, didn't seem to matter to her too much whether anyone was there to visit her ancient, tomb, or to pay, homage or appreciation, for her. She was more cool, more laid back, let's say, more removed, let's say more aloof. But her presence was there. She acknowledged, that I was there and that we were there, like me and the guide, of course. And it was just a different feeling, a different vibration. Very fascinating to see that two different people. Very telling. Very interesting for me because we have two queens with different personalities, different viewpoints to things of this nature. I didn't get a sense that she was hostile or think that you should not be here or please don't disturb my resting place. It was more like, well, you are here and very good, but not with a great sense of appreciation or, warmth. Again, that is to be respected. Everyone is different. She was more, let's say, more noble, more austere in her energy, in her vibration, more removed than the previous queen was. This is how we learn. This is how we learn about people, things of the past, how things were. Getting a sense of how different cultures, different people operate from a different period of time. And again, going to Egypt, we're going to a civilization that was even older than ancient Greece. We're going to things here that are 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 years ago and more. Because one thing that I have learned through my studies and through my research, ancient Egypt is far older than many people think, even scholars. Now, with new discoveries and the use of LIDAR technologies that they're incorporating in archaeology, they are starting to explore and to see that there are things and places and remnants that go back much farther in time than they originally thought. Even the pyramids themselves and the Sphinx are looking to see that they are far older than what they originally assumed them to be. So instead of 10,000 years old, we are going back to 100,000 years old. Instead, this is what archaeology and the scientists are starting to discover. So, it is excellent to experience all of these things and to learn about them. So off I left. So we went back up to desert, and I'm absorbing, this experience, and off we go, around the Egyptian desert. Back on the camel I go, with with its menopausal attitude or so, but away we went, and we went into the desert. We walked about the ancient pyramid of Khufu, the ancient pyramid of Khafre, the ancient pyramid of Menkaure, all three pyramids. Quite astounding. I got a lot of vibration, a lot of energy from there. We went out further into the desert. My guide had a horse and I was on the camel. At one point he wanted to sell the horse to me. I said, I don't think so. I can't possibly transport that back on the plane and I can't afford it. But nevertheless. Anyway, so we are off into the desert where we get a beautiful view of the pyramids just for tourists to see. So of course I took my pictures. He took pictures of me in front of the pyramids. I have to find them so you can see. I took my video. Glorious. From the distance, I saw the ancient tomb of Saqqara, out there, the ancient step pyramid. I said, I have to go over there when I have a chance at some other point. So off we went, and we got to visit all of this. I got to walk about the Giza Plateau for a bit. Wonderful. So finally we go back, and then we go back to the place where, out below the Giza Plateau. And he takes me to meet the owner of the tourist thing with the camel or whatever. So I make my payment there. And then he sold me some oils, Egyptian oils, which are just magnificent. as well. And it was impressive because they started to want to charge me a bit more money than the whole thing actually cost. But because I was by myself and there was nothing to do to help to defend myself or so, I just paid what I had to extra, unfortunately. But I got some oils out of it, and this I overpaid more than these oils. However, the owner, who looked very typically Egyptian, was sitting there in meditation on his carpet with his turban on, and he took my hands and he gave me a reading because he was a psychic. So he gave me a reading about myself, and he was quite accurate actually. He mentioned my mother as well, certain things which were quite accurate as well. So I'll give him that one. So the experience, took a little turn there that was a bit uncomfortable, but nevertheless it was fine. So back to the hotel I went in taxi, fine. And so that was an experience. But the metaphysical portion was glorious to feel from the queens or so. I said, well, I have to go back again. Obviously, I have almost a week here, so I will be back. And sure enough, I did. So the next day, after that experience or so, I went back, to the pyramids, this time on my own. As I learned from taking the taxi, I said, you know what, this isn't so far away after all. I can walk this. So from my hotel to the pyramids was actually 3 miles, as I learned. I could walk that like about 45 minutes or so, fine. So the people walking back and forth on Alexandria Desert Road, it was an adventure. So the next day, I took my bottle of water with me or so, whatever, my backpack, and I started trekking down the desert road. As I'm passing by, I'm seeing some of the ancient structures and ancient villages there on one side. On the other side of the road, there's a big wall and there's just desert. After that, just desert. So this is where the Egyptian desert, it starts, from that section there. So that was fascinating to see the desert. And so I kept walking down and walking down. At one point, I crossed over the road, went to take a little break. There was a pedestal. There's certain gates so you can head into the actual desert itself there. But they have those, cordoned off, so you just can't walk in because you have for safety purposes. But that's for the people there that work there or so, whatever. They have to get in there to do what they do in the desert or fix the sand or whatever, when there was a sandstorm, etc. So there was this ancient pedestal there on either side, so I stayed there for a bit. So I can climb this. I want to get a view of the village on the other side there, the other side of the street. So I took my camera up there. So I'm up there on the pedestal, taking a view of Giza, from there on the camera. And as I'm doing this, there's a gentleman crossing the road, kind of diagonally. So he's a middle-aged gentleman, I say like about in his 40s, early 40s or so, wearing a white kaftan, very Egyptian looking. In fact, he looked very much like Saddam Hussein, only with rounder and kinder eyes. So that gives you an idea what he looked like. So as he's crossing the road from one to the other, I'm just about to head down off this pedestal that I was on, and he looks up and he goes, who are you? So that, hello, I'm Dee. Ah, okay, well, I am Kamal. And then come. So I came down, he helped me down the pedestal the rest of the way. And where are you from? I said, well, I am from the United States, from New York. Ah, yes, New York. And how wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to Egypt. Everyone in Egypt tells you the first thing, welcome to Egypt. They're wonderful, lovely, everyone. As I was walking down the desert road, people passed by in their cars, and they would all be waving at me, saying, hello, welcome to Egypt. And it was just very wonderful to experience that. People of all ages, all sizes or so, whatever, young children, whatever, they'd be waving at me. I felt like a movie star in a way. I think they never saw somebody like me before. With all the hair, and just, 6 feet tall practically. So I was like a sight for them to see. So I said, well, welcome, welcome. How long will you be here? Also a few days. Oh, excellent, excellent. And have you been to the beach? Yes, I have, and I'm going back now. Ah, wonderful. Well, it's very hot outside. Well, look, I have, a store right here. This is Old Giza. So we're very close to the gates of Old Giza. So, well, come with me, and I will show you my leather goods store. Is that wonderful? So fine. So we crossed the road again. We went through the gateway of Old Giza, and sure enough, there's a village and a town there. And there are buildings there and homes, and there's this tall building. We walk a little bit, and he asked me a few questions about myself, and I asked him questions about him. And so there's his establishment in this big hotel, up there. He's on the ground floor. So come see my store. It's wonderful. So we went a few steps, and there was this beautiful store where he sold, items of Egypt, statues, things like that, perfumes, oils. The Egyptians are very much into oils and their fragrances, which are glorious, absolutely glorious. So we sat down on the pillows that he had, very, very Egyptian, very Middle Eastern. He offered me a drink of water, very gracious or so. And we talked for a bit, and he said, well, I've had this store for quite several years, and I do quite well, so I sell leather goods. I see there were leather shoes, wonderful, and leather oils. I said, oh, yes. I told him my story about, well, I had to buy some oils yesterday at this site that I took the tour from, and it was a little intimidating in a way. I think they overcharged me, and he's just sat there staring at me. He said, how much did they charge you? So I told him, I think they charged me, I don't know how many Egyptian pounds. He was like, what? He was taken aback. Said, no, that is grossly overpaying. I don't like that. I don't like that. They overcharge you. I don't like when they cheat. I don't like when people cheat, on others. You had that accent. And he said, I don't like that. They overcharge you. They took money away from you from that. That cannot be allowed. He said, go to the hotel and go to the concierge and speak with the manager there about this. Tell them what happened. I guarantee you they will get your money back. For sure, absolutely. Do what you have to do. And because they charge you tremendous. Apparently, I had learned that I paid about like $200, for these oils. In Egyptian pounds, it's different because back in 2002, $1 was equivalent to 20 Egyptian pounds. I started learning more about that while I was actually there at the time. So for me, that wasn't a lot of money that I provided to them, but for them, that was a tremendous amount, for 3 bottles of oil. So they tried to take advantage of the tourist. But luckily, Kamal and his name, the gentleman's name that I mentioned to you from Giza, his name is Kamal Abou Farag. And as I learned from him, he is owns that business, but also businesses there. And as I learned later on, he also owned the hotel where his store was located. So this very tall structure there, at least for Giza, about 5 or 6 stories or so, was his. So he's a very affluent, person, of Giza. He also informed me that he was the son of the former mayor of Al-Giza. So he was quite a established person there and quite wealthy, also. And he did a lot of business with people from Europe or so, whatever. He's a businessman. So his English was impeccable, and he dealt with a lot of people from all over the world. So he was, very forthright and wanting to help me at my time there. He said, go to the manager. I guarantee they will give you the oils. Well, I will tell you, luckily I did not open them. I have not opened them. They are absolutely intact. Good, even better. So you can give them back in the entirety. They have to pay you back, give you back all the money. Good. So that was it. So he became my Egyptian angel, there. So at that point I left, went back to the pyramids. So I trekked from there to Old Giza. I also learned that the police there carry rifles as well, in Egypt. So that was fascinating to see. I'd never seen rifles before with police officers or soldiers, but that's their law, there. So up I go to the Egyptian plateau once again. And I go and I see finally, with my own time, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. So I'm there at the pyramid. I get to touch the pyramid and absorb the energy and its power. I get to look up at this immense structure. I get to climb the pyramid at the top because people can climb up to a certain point. There you cannot climb up all the way to the top because they do not allow it. That is illegal. But you can climb, up to a certain place, and also there's an entrance to the pyramid above where you can go in and visit inside to the king's chambers and the queen's chambers, also within the pyramids. So I was there sitting on the pyramid, getting a sense of the stones that can weigh up to 100 tons or so. It is incredible. I'm looking at this and I'm experiencing it. I'm laying there on the pyramid. I say, this is impossible for humans to have done this entirely all on their own so long ago. How could they possibly do this? I know they had thousands and tens of thousands of slaves, but still, if just one stone alone weighs like close to 100 tons or so, or at least 50 tons or whatever, how is this possible to build such an immense structure in this way? I know it took many decades to build these pyramids also, but still, just getting them up there in the structure, so they had help. They just could not have done this alone. I know they were wonderfully advanced in their sciences and in their brilliance, but physics, is something else. And to build those structures the way they did it and the way Imhotep, who was one of the principal builders of the pyramid, built this was astounding for so long ago with the tools that they had. They didn't have the wheel at that time. So they had levers and everything. How they did it, I do believe, and I do have a sense that there was help along the way. So as we've heard, through various scholars or so, researchers of science, as well as, from the metaphysical side of things or so, they do believe that there were ancients from other places that came upon the earth at that time to offer their assistance and their technologies for these things. So I do believe there was a hand here that was beyond this world in putting these things together. There's a lot that is still unknown. How could you lift such stones in such a way? Well, there's a technology or so that can do that, actually. To this day, they still have not figured it out. How they can make a 100-ton stone lift, almost as light as a feather. Obviously, they knew the secrets then. We have not been able to find the secrets since then. But it is out there. There is one person that seemed to know, in Florida. If many of you have heard of Coral Castle, located near Miami, Florida, in the town of Homestead, Florida, there is structures that were created there by one gentleman, a very small little gentleman, many years ago, who carved and created structures out of stone. And he did this all by himself. And some of these things weigh tons, and yet he did it all alone. And he said that he had the secret, or knew the secret of the Egyptians and how to build such things. How he did it was miraculous, because he would build these things at night, in the middle of the night. No one would see it or could see it. Yet he moved mountains, it seemed, all by himself. And he created these amazing structures. I know it because I have been there and I've seen them for myself. I have visited Coral Castle 5 years ago, actually, about 30 miles away from Miami, and got to see it for myself. I know there's one or people that I know, at least I know one or two that have also visited Coral Castle as well. And they were, also impressed by this and by this gentleman who built this all by himself. And so he knew the secrets and the technologies. Somehow, when he passed away, whatever secret that was there was taken. We don't know exactly who, but when they went to find whatever that was there, whatever secret technology that he used, one particular tower vanished and hasn't been seen or known of since. So there are wonders and glories that we don't know about yet and still searching for. Back to Egypt. So using the same sort of principles and technologies that they did not leave really any evidence of behind, at least not that we know of yet, they were able to build these incredible structures, there. So as I walked about the desert, and I walked about all 3 pyramids, it was just incredible to see and to experience this. And I could go back in time, to this as well. And I remembered one particular experience that I had years ago when I kind of went back in time and I had a vision in the dream state. But I knew it was a vision. It wasn't a regular dream, because I can always distinguish the difference between a regular dream and a prophetic dream or a visionary experience. And I had a visionary experience of a time when I was in Egypt and the pyramids had been built already and they were glorious. They shone like the sun. They aren't what they are now. At that time, they had alabaster, covering them. And when the sun hit, they would just shine like mirrors. You know, something long ago. And I can remember seeing the pyramids from a distance. And I can remember my life there, and I was not royalty, but I was associated with them. And I lived among them, and I knew that I was somehow living and favored amongst the royals' family there. And I was, in a sense, adopted by them. For whatever reasons, I don't know the details of that experience. I just know that that's the way it was for me, then at that time. I was under the protection of a great one, there. I do believe it was Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was quite old. And at that point, he had just passed. In this particular portion of the experience that I was having about my time there. And Pharaoh was very old, and he had passed. And my worry and my concern was what's going to happen to me. Because I am no longer under Pharaoh's gaze or protection. And there was a new regime that was going to take over. A regime that was not of Pharaoh's lineage, of family. So the family that was there also were in jeopardy. They were no longer in power. Once Pharaoh passed away, these usurpers were going to take over. And that is what was occurring at that time. So I was there just as Pharaoh had passed. And I was wondering what's going to happen to me now. Because I knew that these people were hostile. They were hostile towards the royal family, but they were especially even more hostile towards someone such as I, because I was not of royal blood. And I was frightened as to what is going to become of me, what was going to happen, how will I be able to take care of myself? Because it was a different civilization, a different people. Once they cast you out, they cast you out. And I remember feeling a sense of fear. But what am I going to do? How am I going to extricate myself from this peril? So despite the beauty that I was seeing with the pyramids, the desert, the people that were around, there was also this time of fear. Because it was a change, it was transition. And not in a positive way, but very negative. From there, I came out of that experience. But it helped me learn a lot about why I feel the way I do here in this lifetime. How I have reacted to certain experiences here and certain things also. Why did I feel that I am not of this time period, but feel very distinct of this entire world? That I am not a part of this experience, really. I come from a different type of experience, a different way of viewing things, a different feeling about things. That I'm not really a part of this civilization, a part of this world as it is now. That particular experience helped me in a way get some answers to certain things from the present, here and now. That was one experience. So going around the pyramids and seeing that back in 2002 brought a lot of that back to me. I was going back in time and then coming to the present and making connections and establishing things here for me, which in a way has brought some answers and in a way has been liberating, also to a certain extent. So from there, I continued walking and trekking along the Egyptian desert. And then I was back in front of the pyramid of Khufu as I'm going to go and visit Pharaoh's Chamber. So I climbed up the pyramid there, the section where the tourists go to. and I was greeted there by a wonderful gentleman there wearing a turban. In fact, I have a picture of him with me at the very entrance of the tomb. So if you've seen my page, my personal page, and the cover, page, you will see that cover picture there of me with the gentleman there who's the guide, for the entrance, of the pyramid of Khufu, there. So I got to him and I made my payment so I could visit and take the tour of internally inside of the pyramid. So be it, that's what occurred. Just before I did that, I was waiting for the other tour to come to finish, and I'm waiting up there. All of a sudden, I hear somebody screaming at me, "Hey, miss, miss, miss!" And I'm looking down, and there's this little boy in the desert running up. "Miss, I have something for you, I have something for you." I said, "Okay, all right." So I climbed down a little bit, and he hands me this little small pyramid. And I take that, that's for you. That is for you. I said, "Oh my goodness, thank you. But how much?" I said, No, take it. That's for you. I said, "All right, thank you." So I had a replica of the pyramid in my right hand just before going in. I said, "Okay, that's fascinating to experience. Very good." In fact, hold on a moment. I'll be right back. Hold on. So as I told you, the little boy came and put a little pyramid in my hand and told me to just take it with me. So this, if you can see it, is the actual little pyramid that he gave me to take with me. So if you can see, I'm going to try to get a little closer. Let's see if you can see it in the camera. I'm going to try to hold myself as still as possible. I know the clarity there is not so good in the camera, but you can see. You can see a replica of the three pyramids in there in the desert. And each side has a different inscription and different pictures there of ancient Egyptians, life and culture, throughout there. I wish you could see with a little bit more clarity. Trying to get it closer to the camera. I don't know if you can. I think it's a little bit better. So you can see there's a pharaoh and a queen in the center there, and the disc of Amun at the top, which always seems to be evident. Another depiction there of others, there during the ancient time periods. And let's see, what is this? I don't know if you can see that clearly enough, but here we have another royal, there. Always with the disc of Amun at the very top of the pyramid. And back to the first picture that you saw, which also has the Sphinx, in the front, if you can make that out. So it's the Sphinx with the three pyramids in the back, and the disc of Amun, at the top. So this was the pyramid that the little boy gave me, to take with me. So when the time came for the tour to begin, I was able to go in there with a few other people, and I had the pyramid in my hand as I went in there. There was a reason for that. Spirit always works in its way. So up we go, climbing up to the pyramid. Let me tell you, that is not an easy experience. If you have a heart problem, or if you have respiratory problems, I do not recommend this for you. You will not be able to do it. There is no air conditioning. There is light, up there, and it's a very long climb up there. You have to climb. Here you can climb upward, and there are slats once again, and maybe some handrails along the sides. They've been able to install those in there, but it is a long, arduous climb, and it gets hot, in there as well. And I went, as we all know, in June, and it was already, the temperature was relatively comfortable, but inside the pyramid, that was something else. And then you go up there and you climb and you climb and you climb. Some of you, if you've seen documentaries of ancient Egypt, they have shown, the climb in the pyramid of Khufu on television, several documentaries. So if you've been lucky enough to see it, you know what I am talking about. but still seeing it on television and actually doing it in person are two different things. So I recommend that you be very healthy and strong if you decide, to go visit inside the pyramid. You need to be, at 100% health. And so up we went, and then finally there's an entrance, to the tomb of Khufu. Now this entrance is not very high. It's like about 3 feet, maybe the most, maybe 2 feet or whatever. Interesting. So you have to squat and you have to go in there before you can go into Pharaoh's chamber. So for me, having 3.5 or 3.25 inch long legs, 3.5 feet and a quarter inch of legs, I was not going to go in there, just squatting, in there on 2 feet. I had to literally, crawl, into the space to get up into, Pharaoh's chamber. So that's exactly what I did, pyramid in hand, and I went in there. When I popped out, there were two guides inside, and they saw me, and they started laughing. So, but up I went along with the other people, and there we were in Pharaoh's chamber, in the pyramid of Khufu. And it was a wonder, to experience, because there's very high walls. I said about 30 feet in height. There's really nothing left there except many hieroglyphics, many depictions of King Khufu, of Pharaoh Khufu, and his lifetime. Glorious to see. They don't allow cameras to take pictures, so I couldn't do that really. The leftover of the sarcophagus for where Pharaoh was laid to rest is there, at least the outer shell of it. And from there, it's quite an impressive thing, made of marble or alabaster or whatever. It's quite high. So Pharaoh was placed in this pedestal-like, resting spot, and he's rested high up there, and the pedestal is about here. So I'd say it's about 4 feet, off the ground or so. And it was broken into because they had, again, looters from thousands of years ago tried to steal everything, from the ancient tombs. So at that point, they had broken into Pharaoh's, sarcophagus, or sort of the outer layer, and you could see that it was broken into. There's nothing in there at this point except the shell of where Pharaoh was laid to rest. And the hieroglyphics, the carving in the wall where they put, funerary items, vases or so, in honor of Pharaoh. And way up high, you can see the hieroglyphics or so, and the pyramid, and the roof. Alabaster, granite, whatever, very impressive. 30 feet high, the ceiling must be. A very large, space in there. And there was a good, like I say, 16 or 17 people, standing there. There was lots of space in there. So we got to visit, Pharaoh Khufu's chamber and see all these wonders, in there. And as we were doing this, I'm looking in there, I'm seeing one or two tourists actually stepping inside of Pharaoh's sarcophagus and having their picture taken in there. I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified to see such a thing. This was Pharaoh of Egypt. This was Pharaoh Khufu, one of the greatest rulers of ancient Egypt. And these people were desecrating his space and desecrating his coffin and his tomb and stepping in there. No one was stopping them. None of the guides there, no one was stopping these people from doing this. I was absolutely taken aback. I could not believe what I was seeing, that this would be allowed. As I said, I was absolutely horrified. I said, I cannot believe that they would allow these people to do this and desecrate a king's, burial place. So, as they did that, I just kept looking at the space, feeling the energy, because we know one thing about pyramids. They retain and transmit a great deal of energy. Energy that can be magnetic frequency heading from the stars, as well. The ancient Egyptians were incredible astronomers. They built things accordingly to astronomical and astrological specifications. Their pyramids, for many of you who may not know this, the pyramids are made in a line that is identical to the constellation of Osiris, or Orion, Orion. is oriented in that position to the constellation of Orion. So the Egyptians followed a very close relationship with the stars and the planets, and they knew about ley lines and energies that came from there. They were a highly advanced civilization. And again, they had such a connection with the ancient gods and goddesses. They had a connection with the stars, and they had perhaps a very strong relationship with those from other planets, dimensions, and places. And again, we don't really have complete evidence, but strong indicators showing that there may have been visitors from other places who had come to Egypt long ago and may perhaps have been partially responsible for building or co-building many of the structures that are there, and for the form and religions and the beliefs of those ancient civilizations. So, there was a great deal of energy in the pyramid. We got to visit for about 15 minutes or so. We were there, I was looking at this. Just before we left, I went over to Pharaoh's sarcophagus. And I asked Pharaoh for forgiveness for these people who had disrespected his resting place. And to please, have mercy on these people, for they are ignorant and they do not know your significance and what you are and what you meant so long ago in this kingdom. So that was very important for me to do that, to show respect and reverence to Pharaoh and to this incredible space and place. For this is a gift. And we had the blessing of being able to visit this place and this sacred, chamber that many thousands of years ago no one was allowed to go in there except for the most holy people. So this was very precious. And from there, we just looked a bit more, and then the guide said, it's time to leave or so. So, I was looking and studying, all the hieroglyphics around the walls, or the pictorials that were there as people were leaving and leaving gradually from Pharaoh's chamber. And I was just looking and absorbing this energy and getting the feeling of it. And then suddenly, when I looked around, there was no one there. And I looked at it, oh my goodness, I was all alone in Pharaoh's chamber. Everyone had gone. It was just me, the pyramid in my right hand, and Pharaoh's chamber. And, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And I looked a bit and nobody said anything. Nobody came back to look for me. I waited for a good 2 or 3 minutes, maybe longer. I was in there, I was enjoying the space on my own. No one came back. No one said anything. I said, okay, this is incredible. I'm here all alone in Pharaoh's chamber. It was awe-inspiring. Again, nobody came. 5 minutes later, nobody came, nothing. I'm still there all by myself. So I felt that this was a gift, once again, from Spirit. So what I did was, I went to the center of the chamber. I sat down in a lotus position. I had my pyramid, my right hand, my other hand. I sat there. I closed my eyes, and I began to meditate. And I began to meditate for the energies of Pharaoh's chamber, for the energies of the pyramid. And I meditated for those energies to come through me and for them to come outward in return. And I meditated there, and I had a watch on at that time also, but I was able to meditate for 15 minutes, all by myself, in Pharaoh Khufu's chamber in the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And I knew it was 15 minutes because I timed it exactly. And there I was, being able to get and absorb all this incredible energy from this ancient structure from 10,000 years before, all by myself. And the whole time, no one came. Not a sound, nothing. Just silence, me, Pharaoh, and his chamber. So after I meditated for that time, I got up, I had my pyramid in my hand, absorbed with all of that energy, infused with all of that energy from Pharaoh Khufu's chamber. I said another prayer of gratitude. I was very grateful to Khufu, to Pharaoh Khufu, for this time alone to spend with him and in his chamber, which I have a strong feeling does not happen very often, very rare. And I said my prayer of thank you and left, his chamber, and climbed all the way down, all by myself. Not one person was there as I was climbing down, the pyramid, until I got to the very bottom once again. At that point, I looked in and saw there was the Queen's, chamber down there. So another time I'll go in there and visit that. I don't want to push my luck. And I got to see, from down there as well, and went to the space and met, the guide once again. Oh, there you are. I said, wow, how incredible. And then we visited for a bit or so, and then I climbed down, the pyramid. As I did that, and I reached the bottom, there was the little boy waiting for me at the bottom. He said, oh, miss, how are you? I said, yes. Can I please have, like whatever, 2 pounds or whatever for the pyramid? Said, oh, now you're charging me. I didn't say that to him, but he only charged me like $4, in American money, which was fine. So I gave it to him. It was lovely, and he was very sweet. And off he went. And then I went and I continued about, but I absorbed all this incredible energy, from the pyramid, which was a true blessing and a gift, and I could feel it, and I knew it was with me, and I knew that it made a difference, and I was not the same afterward, from that experience, because I had all of this essence with me from so long ago, from thousands of years ago with me, and I have the small pyramid also that carries that energy as well, which obviously I have brought back with me, as well. So from there I started trekking the rest of the desert. Then I went to visit the Sphinx, which is right down from the Grand Pyramid. So down I walked, through there. Thank God I had a bottle of water. I would have passed out in that desert. It's getting hotter and hotter over there. Egypt is a very hot country, as we know. It is the desert after all. And I went down, so I visited the Sphinx. I was able to stand in front of the Sphinx. And as I did that, I looked at the Sphinx very, very closely. I could see its face. And as I looked upon the face, I saw that there was a slight smile, on that face. I said, my goodness, isn't that something else? And then the Sphinx has a very slight smile, like a questioning smile, almost like, I have secrets, and wouldn't you like to know what they are? And it reminded me of the similar smile that the Mona Lisa has from Leonardo da Vinci. So it's very, very reminiscent of that. So I was struck by that. I got a very good feeling from the Sphinx. I also knew that there were secrets below there as well. I had known beforehand. And just from my spiritual sense as well, that if you look at the left paw of the Sphinx, if you go in there, there's an entranceway or a key there to an entranceway that could lead you to secrets from Egypt of long ago. Now, mind you, with archaeology, they're not allowed to crack those things open because that would be destroying or defacing an ancient monument. So they're not able to do that. I do know that currently with archaeology, they are using more modernized techniques to see if they can see through there with certain X-ray or LiDAR technology so that they can finally peer into that and see what's more. I do know also, and maybe perhaps many of you know as well, that near the Sphinx, around the left paw or so, whatever, they have found some sort of a doorway or whatever that leads below. And indeed below they did discover temples in there. And there's the tomb of Osiris, below, not too far off from there, which they have found. And there was a gigantic sarcophagus there inside of a great, structure that was once with underwater, or there was water in there. It was quite incredible. And there are doorways down there, way below. And there's places that they can go into that they are still discovering. They still have to dig more and more. There are things that they have let the public know, but there's a lot that is still unknown as well. They are not able to reveal those things yet. Even in the pyramid itself, they have done excavations or so, whatever. There's a seal somewhere, that another documentary a few years ago they went into, and there was a wall, there was a seal, and they bore holes in it, and then they didn't go further. They couldn't see too much, but they weren't going to explain further because they had to find out more. And also there are secrets in there that they're not going to reveal, or are unable to reveal at this time. Egypt is a very mysterious place. There are many secrets there. In the last 10 years or so, there have been many glorious discoveries. The golden mummies that they have found, the 40 golden mummies in one place, more structures below in various areas of the Giza Plateau. They're discovering things more than ever before. Modern archaeological technology and computers are helping tremendously with all of this. There are many wonders there. And just recently or so, and I've also put this on my page, on Facebook, there's an archaeologist who is getting very close to discovering the tomb of Cleopatra in Alexandria, Egypt. So Dr. Catherine Martinez is an archaeologist from Santo Domingo, and she's devoted, since 2004, almost over 15 years of excavating near Alexandria, Egypt, at a temple complex not too far off from Alexandria, from old Alexandria, whatever, where they do believe that finally the tomb of Cleopatra, rests. So they're getting closer and closer. If indeed they discover that tomb, it will be the greatest archaeological find of the 21st century. So it is getting close, so something to keep an eye on regarding ancient Egypt, and another very famous icon of Egyptian culture from long ago. Anyway, back to my experience. So from there, I was able to absorb all of that energy. I had the pyramid. I was able to visit the Sphinx. I was able to get verification that indeed my sense from before was right in regards to something more beneath, the Sphinx. And it has been corroborated with discoveries that they have made in the last 10 years or so, there. So my sense of ancient Egypt was right, and it's more and more is coming through. So I'm getting confirmation and validations of the things that I've experienced and I have sensed, and more to come. So the Sphinx was giving me a sign that I was on the right track. And the Sphinx itself is a mystery because it is far older than what it appears to be. So it is not 10,000 years of age as they have discovered so far. The Sphinx can go back even beyond 100,000 years ago. And the face of the Sphinx currently, even though it is disfigured, since its nose was sliced off, that is an old ancient Egyptian culture from enemies or so of the state, or so they believed in, cutting off the nose of the enemy. And that was, symbolic as why the face of Khafre is the Pharaoh Khafre, who also has a pyramid, the third pyramid, or the second pyramid belongs to Pharaoh Khafre, was sliced off from his enemies. But that face there, from what indications are showing, is not the original, the face that was carved, on the Sphinx. From what they speculate, the original face on that Sphinx was actually perhaps of a lion. So that lion body that this adorns the Sphinx is actually, been altered. And that originally there should have been a lion's face on it. And who knows what that indicates. And then somehow they removed that, or they built over it, and they put Khafre's face on it instead. If you know anything about ancient Egyptian culture and art, you always see that the gods of ancient Egypt always have the head of some form of an animal or a bird on the body of a human. With the Sphinx, we have the opposite. We have the head of a human on the body of an animal. That was not really customary in ancient Egyptian times, going down to the particular dynasties. And as we know, there were many dynasties in Egypt: Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and so on, all the way up to the times of Cleopatra, who was the last pharaoh, the last queen of Egypt in Alexandria. So things changed a great deal and altered a great deal from that period of time. So, as I said, there are many mysteries to Egypt and its culture and its people. They did not leave written works in paper or papyrus. Not very much survives. What is written is basically in stone and in stele, as we see on their various structures throughout the country. From there, we've been able to see and decipher certain elements of their life, of their culture, of their history. But a lot is still unknown. But there's still a great deal, a tremendous amount to discover from them. And as I said earlier, more and more, thanks to the advances in science and technology, a vast amount is starting to be revealed and discovered, more than ever before. So we are on the verge in Egypt to be discovering something of tremendous value that can provide a great deal of explanation as to why things were the way they were then. It could solve a lot of their secrets and mysteries. It can help us in this current time with incredible technologies and advancements that we still know very little or nothing about, that we could incorporate with the current state of sciences, which is also advancing rapidly and evolving greatly at this time. Incorporating things from the ancients and their knowledge to what we have in the present can make it into an incredibly fascinating and wondrous future ahead for the 21st century. So, as I was at the tomb there and at the pyramids, I gained a lot of knowledge. I got to visit the Temple of Imhotep, who was one of the principal builders of the Egyptian tombs and the pyramids. He had a glorious, mastaba-like structure there in temple because he was of great significance, even though the Giza Plateau and the pyramids were for royals, but because Imhotep was so brilliant and so instrumental in making these incredible monuments or so, as one of the people who did that, he was granted, a burial spot there on the Giza Plateau, as well. The tomb is quite lovely to see. And so I absorbed a great deal of all of that energy, So, to come to a close, I know that our time here has really run a great deal. Our 2 hours here, it's a lot to cover, but we're coming to the conclusion. As I left the Giza Plateau, I went back to the hotel, obviously, with all of this knowledge, information, brilliance or so. I went back to my hotel room. I went to talk to the manager, so going back to more mundane circumstances about my experience, there with the tour, owners or so, what they did or so. And the manager was very attentive and said, I will speak with this person and clarify this situation. And when I mentioned Kamal Abou Farag's name, his eyes kind of lit up a bit. So apparently Kamal, is quite well known, in Giza, and that was helpful, too. And sure enough, the next day or so, I got a knock on my hotel room door. I answered it, and it was one of the staff there, and said, Miss, here, this is the money that you paid for those oils. We are returning it back to you. The owner has uh, provided this, for you in return. I said, oh, I was stunned. The full amount, of that was there. So, how incredible! Here, would you please take these oils? So I gave him the oils, and please provide that back, to this gentleman, okay? Because they are completely intact, and there's no need for me to have them. They're pristine. And since he provided the money back, it is only fitting that he gets his merchandise in return. So he accepted that, the manager, the co-manager, and took that back as well. And I got my money back in the process. So again, mystical, wondrous things happen. Afterward, I went to visit Kamal once again, there, and I informed him of what occurred, and he was, very good, excellent, and I was very grateful to him. And, oh, please, thank you so much. So what I did was that I purchased, oils, and his oils were genuine, by the way, from Kamal instead, so at a fair price. So I bought and brought back, original Egyptian oils, from Giza, which I still have a little bit left, here with me. I've managed to keep them all these years, 18 years. I just little drops or so, whatever, throughout the years. And the fragrances are incredible, absolutely glorious. You don't experience things like that here in the United States too much. Maybe in New York a bit if you know where to go to, whatever, you can purchase certain things, but you don't get that type of quality of oil, as you get in Egypt from the land of origin. So that was a wonderful outcome. And I also heard later on, at some point there, that apparently the owner, of the tour company came to see me in person, to apologize directly, for this. And I wasn't in my room at that time. I was somewhere else at some point. But the manager, did tell me later on, and the concierge told me after, no, he came to apologize, directly to you. So that was quite impressive to hear. And so wondrous things happened. You never know. And my Egyptian angels, in the form of the human angel, Kamal Abou Farag, and the spirits of Egypt were watching over me, still. And my angels from Greece, also were always watching me. So the whole time that I took my trip, I know that I was very protected and guided. And I was blessed the whole way. I was protected very, very much so. And that was very comforting for me, for being in a country that was foreign to me. I didn't speak the language. Luckily, the people do. And it was just a good thing to have and feel that I was safe, which is the most important thing of all. So the day came when I finally had to leave Egypt, and I received all those incredible blessings, walking throughout Cairo, visiting all the sights, the sounds, the people, their hospitality, how gracious they were, something I always take back with me as well. Visiting the zoo, there at the actual resort was wonderful. They had beautiful peacocks there and beautiful flamingos, also, and other birds and animals there. In the nighttime, I'd walk, around the grounds, of the resort, because it was quite a large resort. So there was always something new to see, there. And I could see bats hanging from the trees. So there was these large fruit bats that would fly around, at nighttime, and it was quite a sight to see with the moon, there in the sky and the palm trees in the Egyptian desert, and seeing these large bats, flying about. One person told me, you have nothing to fear. They don't harm people or whatever. They eat fruit. They're excellent. That was wonderful. I attended a wedding. Also, there was a beautiful wedding happening one evening at the resort. So I got to attend a Egyptian wedding, and it was quite spectacular. And the bride was dressed in pink, robes and attirements, and the groom and the family, when they were all dancing, and they had beautiful Middle Eastern music with the drums, and they were all dancing. Everybody was very happy and glorious. They also played a lot of American pop music as well. So, I was able to dance for a bit there, and everybody was just lovely and wonderful, and that was a blessing, as well, to experience, also. So not everything was exactly, mystical and whatever. There was quite some very nice events that happened from the regular side of the world, as well. And that was quite lovely to experience. So on the day of my departure, I took my suitcases, whatever. I was greeted by the concierge, Mr. Fami, who was extremely gracious. And he came to see me off. And he was just wonderful. And the staff were just lovely. I said goodbye to all of them. And yes, Trey, I think I remember you saying something. I did buy a few souvenirs and items. I said the oils that were there. And if you can see this, let me see if I can hold it up, or let me remove it. I had also had the intent arriving in Egypt that I wanted a bracelet, with the Eye of Horus on it. And throughout my several days there, I was looking for something like that, even in the hotel, whatever. I couldn't find it. Finally, when I left the hotel and went back to Cairo International Airport, I had checked in for my flight and was waiting, for the flight to take off or so. And I happened upon a jewelry shop, there at the airport. And when I look into one of the display cases, there it was. The bracelet that I was looking for had finally materialized. So this, if you can see it, is the bracelet with the Eye of Horus, on it. And it is sterling silver. And this is the bracelet that I was looking for the whole nearly week that I was there and couldn't find, and hoping that I would find it. I didn't want to leave Egypt without it. And right there, just before I left, just about an hour or so or less before I left, there it was. And I was able to purchase it there. And I have it with me ever since. As you can see, I wear it rarely, very rarely, only for special occasions. Tonight is a special occasion, obviously. We're talking about ancient Egypt. So this is the actual bracelet that I was hoping for. So Spirit, once again, at the very last minute, came through and granted me my wish, which was my Eye of Horus, bracelet. So here it is. So miracles happen with Spirit all the time. Again, ask and you shall receive. All you have to do is believe. In regards to that, when I was back in Greece a little bit, my friend Iosif, I went to visit him once at his apartment, lovely apartment in Athens. And we were talking about my trip. I was expecting going to Egypt or so. He had been to Egypt as a child. His grandfather had taken him to see the pyramids also. And then he said, I have something for you. So he went off and he brought back a book for me. And it was in English, luckily. And he said, take this book. This is for you. I said, really? He said, yes, it is. And you will understand. This is very much what you are experiencing at this time. There's a reason for this. And the book, when I looked at the cover, is called The Alchemist. The Alchemist was written by Khalil Gibran. The Alchemist is a very well-known and very well-loved book. And it's been translated in many languages throughout the world. And it's been a #1 bestseller long ago and still is very, very popular. He said this explains about a trip to Egypt from someone and a journey that they were taking and what they were going to learn and seek and find. You will relate very much with this. This story relates a lot about you and what you're doing at this time. So it was lovely to have that book. Again, it's called The Alchemist. I'm sure that many of you have heard of it. For those of you who have not, I highly recommend that you get it in the library or purchase it at Barnes & Noble or send away for it. It's very easy to find. There have been numerous, new publications of it, as well. And no, I'm sorry, it wasn't written by Khalil Gibran. It was written by Paul Coelho. I'm sorry. Paul Coelho is the author of the book. And it tells about a story, about a journey, about, the protagonist there, and about his trip to Egypt, also, there. So it was synchronicity once again working at that time. And I started reading it from there, and I came back and I read it here. And it meant a lot to me. And it was very much what I was experiencing. And it pointed out a different viewpoint, different perspectives that I had not thought about my journey as well, but I could relate upon reading that story. there is a segment there, or a phrase there, or an experience that happens in the book with the protagonist. And it's something I've always remembered and always carried with me ever since. And it's a very well-known phrase, from the story. And it goes something like, and I think I said a little bit before earlier as well, the world always conspires to get you what you want. You basically have to have faith and intent for it to be. And no matter how long it takes, or whatever it takes, eventually, with enough faith and belief, you will get it. The world will provide you what you want. So, on that note, we're going to finish this adventure and this story. I do hope that you enjoyed, my journey, and that you learned something from it, and that you can apply the beliefs, some of the principles, some of the experiences that I had, to yourselves and to your lives, and with certain things, elements, experiences that you have had or want to have, in your life, inspired by these events that I have described to you this evening. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'm looking a little bit through in the past or so. I want to see if anybody wrote anything they need to address or so here. No, Wes, unfortunately, if you're still on, I'm not obviously taking requests. This program wasn't about requests or spot readings or so. This was about, telling a story and telling about metaphysical experiences and hopefully inspiring, as I said, you to go on your own journey, connect with spirit in these various ways or in your own way, to receive answers, to receive, from the questions that you have, to get resolution metaphysically or in the material world, in whatever way that you want, or to help open you up and to illuminate your mind, your spirit, to the connections of that there's more out there, that there are spirits out there and they are there to help us, and there's a purpose for things and a reason, and they will connect with us, and they will let us know that they're there, and they will help us. What we ask for and we believe entirely 100%, we will receive. Sometimes you may not receive it exactly the way you want or what you're expecting, but it will be what you need. That is the most important thing of all, and the rest of the magic is up to you to create. So that is what this evening was about. So on that note, we've gone over 2 hours. It's incredible. But that is the end of this program, the second part of it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you carry some of the energy and some of the magic with you throughout. And have a glorious weekend. It's a very special weekend once again. It's beginning of summer solstice. If you can get into seeing Stonehenge and the summer solstice live, do so over the internet. It will be everywhere. Just search and find, and you'll be able to see it live and in person. We also say farewell to Gemini, the air sign. It is time for Gemini to depart for the year, and we welcome the sign of Cancer, coming into being. So the moon children, this is your time. The sign of the water and emotions. It is your time, and we welcome the Cancerian energy and its divine light, and we'll have a glorious visit for the next month, with Cancer. Remember, it is the sign of the moon, which attaches itself to the solar eclipse, because it's the moon as well responsible for the eclipse, along with the sun. So we will have an especially strong eclipse this particular year in the sign of Cancer, and at the beginning of the summer. Lots of new energies, lots of new beginnings. Charge your stones, even though it's a solar eclipse. Do your wishes. Let's start anew. Let us pray for the beginning of positive and wonderful experiences in the world at this time. The summer begins. It's the season of light, of renewal, of rebirth, along with the spring. We are now in full glory of light. Ask Ask, pray for goodness, for salvation, for the cleansing and healing of this world in every way possible, and all will come to be. And I leave you with that. So for all of you, a glorious weekend, a glorious week, many, many blessings for these new beginnings that we've been graced upon. Take advantage of it. Do it. Use your own magic. Put it out there. Make miracles happen. And I will see you again next week. Good night.